Howdy everyone, it's me once again, the one and only Kurodan. And today, I have more kaiju films for you to review, folks. Yep, more. This is the 8th installment of the original Godzilla series. Yeah, 8. Oh boy. They just keep coming, and coming, and coming. Hey, so anyway, the title for this film is called Son of Godzilla. Of course, I'm referring to the Japanese version, folks, which is the DVD version that I had, folks. So yeah, I'll be just referring to this edition, of course. So which eventually was released into DVD, of course. Picture quality in this is actually really good here, folks. And also, yeah, the sound quality. But the downside, yes, it does have the English subtitles. And yes, you can actually switch the audio from Japanese to English if you want, or vice versa. And yeah, you pay a lot, and I do mean a lot. And yeah, there's not really any extras for this edition I'm talking about. There's like no extras. You pay so much damn money for barely any extras at all, really. There's no commentary or anything. No trailers. Besides what I just said, that's it. Directly for the television in the United States of America, so it never really had a theatrical release in the United States. But in Japan, it actually did. So I'm gonna be just mostly referring to the Japanese version, which was released in Japan theatrically in December of 16th of 1967. Well, anyway, as usual, folks, I do have to talk about the plot of this film, so let's get into it, shall we? So, let's begin. So, we get to see that there's this team of scientists in this film, and let's just say they are attempting to perfect this weather controlling system. So, yeah, we're definitely going in that kind of a thing here, folks. And yes, their efforts are, let's say, tampered with this noisy reporter, and by the sudden presence of this giant praying mantis. Well, they are on an island, so of course that's going to happen. So anyway, the first test of this weather controlling contraption goes astray when the remote control for a for this thing is suddenly jammed by this unexpected signal from the center of the island. So of course, this of course is gonna spring disaster. Yep, we get another Godzilla film taking place in a tropical kind of environment. This will be the second and last time that the franchise would solely focus on this kind of a setting. So yeah, it's just sad that they never tried this again, unfortunately, which is kind of annoying because I kind of wish they could have go and have an adventure centering around this kind of a thing, but they never do this again. I mean, a tropical island seems like a perfect place to have this kind of thing going on. There's a bunch of storylines you could definitely use, like this kind of a thing. I mean, a lot of people like the whole concept of summer anyway. The heat, the drinks, you name it. There's a lot of stuff like people like about summer. So this could be a good way to actually continue this kind of a thing. So I didn't have an issue with that really. So if you really want to do this and just use as a setting for your monster movie, by all means go for it because this will make a pretty good adventure movie by using this kind of a setting, of course. And yes, of course, you're trying to keep things rather refreshing rather than just repeating the exact same plot line over and over again, which of course is highly appreciative, obviously. I actually didn't mind the fact that the story was going to focus on these scientists trying to manipulate the weather and whatnot, and as just some sort of science experiment and whatnot. And one thing that this film became noticeable for, and it will be for the introduction of the character of Minya. Yeah, they baby Godzilla, if you don't call him that. So the company had wanted to introduce a creature like this for the date crowd. Yep, the date crowd. That's actually a genre of film that was actually pretty popular among young couples during the period of time, with the idea that the young women would like the appearance of a cute baby monster. So that's what they did with here, folks. So I guess can't blame him for trying to do something new. I guess in some ways, I guess. So yes, got this whole entire island, this big entire island that's gonna be, of course, filled with various monsters. Yup, there's even a giant spider. So that's pretty cool. And yes, of course, Godzilla and the sun will, of course, get into a fight with that. Yes, the giant praying mantis will appear in the film a few times here and there to have a fight, of course, while simultaneously focusing on the human characters with their, what they want to do for the research and whatnot. So that's pretty cool, of course. And yes, of course, Godzilla himself would trying to do his own thing and just mind his business. So this is one of those few times in the film where he doesn't destroy a city. So there's that. But yeah, for the miniature sets for this film, it does a pretty good job at that. The miniature sets are actually really good. I do like that the details they would have in film, and the monster designs for this movie were actually pretty good too. Considering the fact that this actually became much cheaper than usual, I for one didn't mind this character really, at least in this film. And I didn't mind him since he tried to express a certain type of personality in that way, of course. But the thing is that, like I was saying, the company wanted to do something like this for the idea behind this character. They stated that they wanted to take a brand new approach, so they of course gave Godzilla a child. Even though it was never really explained on how that child came to be, because the character just came in as an egg. Yeah, you heard me, an egg. A gigantic egg where this giant painting mantis would of course start attacking it, of course, and eventually hatches. And of course Godzilla himself will have to defend this egg. And throughout the entire film, pretty much Godzilla himself will have to teach this monster on how to breathe fire and whatnot. But even then, Godzilla himself would like to be left alone and whatnot. And yeah, pretty much in this film, folks, you heard me right. Godzilla's pretty much playing as a parent in this movie. As odd as that may sound. But anyway, the people behind this movie felt that they thought it would be a little strange if they gave Godzilla a daughter. So yes, the character's gender is male. So they're trying to give him a son instead. So they really want to portray the monsters almost like people. So specifically in regards in like the father and son type of relationship between Godzilla and Minya. So they wanted to focus on the relationship between Godzilla and his son throughout the course of the film. In other ways, they actually succeed in doing so. So I guess can't blame them for trying to be a bit more creative because, like I said, where in the film review, this is the eighth installment. Yep, 8 movies in total. This is the eighth film in the original series of movies, so they had to come up with something to come out a bit more refreshing rather than just, reusing the same plot line over and over again. So that's definitely a good thing there. And I guess one other comment I would definitely bring up, which is something I did bring up before in my previous videos. What I'm referring to is to how the female characters are actually portrayed in these films. So yes, of course, once again, we do get to see that one of the most important characters is a woman. And yeah, she tries to be gentle with the little monster, of course. And I mean, he's not really that little, but you know what I mean. The empowerment of female has always been something in the Japanese culture in one way or another in their society, which has not been fully realized to some degree, but it's definitely a growing society to create an environment where women can actually be properly displayed in their power to the fullest extent. One way of doing this is, of course, showing the female characters in these movies. And she's just not there just to be there. She's pretty active, of course. She's gone all exploring all over the island, which I do think is a pretty cool thing. And yeah, I know it might sound like I'm repeating myself here, but this is definitely something I actually don't mind doing it, of course, bringing it up again. So we do have to believe that, especially in Japan, they take the notion that they believe that they can create a society where women can shine. It's not just a social issue, but because it can be an issue in more ways than one. Like for maybe the job market, or maybe the government can aim to achieve diversity by expanding the role of women and creating an embracing environment kind of a thing in the workplace, but it does require, some sort of, partnership of men and women, of course. It calls for business, exchange styles and whatnot, and traditional values and whatnot. So this is definitely something to keep reflecting on, I guess, because this is something I won't mind seeing in a movie, as long as there's a good story behind it, of course. And this is definitely a genre where you can do that. I mean, the films always had this kind of a thing from the very start, anyway. So it does make sense on what they wanted to do. So yeah, and having this a little a monster where doesn't have to take out them, they basically have women as a primary goal in some ways because the whole dating genre of film is actually was actually a thing at the time, like I was explaining a moment ago. So I guess they're definitely going for more of a summer feel kind of a thing, which I do think is a good thing. A summer, bright heat, and sand, warm sand between your toes, of course. Kind of give you a sense of that. And in a lot of ways, they actually did, which I'm glad they did. They're not trying to just repeat the same plot line over and over and over again, which, of course, can be rather difficult considering the fact that making quite a bit of sequels it can get rather tiresome. I know lots of film franchises out there might have just given up at this point, which thankfully they didn't do that here, of course. And I appreciate the fact they're actually trying to continue to create some storylines and whatnot for these characters. That's pretty cool. And again, I'm referring to just the Japanese version of this film, because that's the way it was intended. Yeah, and yes, throughout the entire movie, it should be obvious that I watched this with the English subtitles, which I didn't mind really. But yeah, so I can definitely say that this film does succeed what it's supposed to have some sort of grand adventure, of course. And I definitely can say that it definitely has a sense of that, pretty much. And I did appreciate it for that. So having some grand adventure going on here is definitely what. Going back with the whole bit where these scientific experiments of weather manipulation is taking place on this island in the South Pacific, the scientists on this island are becoming more ruthless because of the intense heat, coupled with the fact that there are giant brain mantises roaming around the island. However, of course, the hard-nosed professor does not want to give up, so he keeps going and going and pushes the men on. So, of course, as preparations continue, let's just say that there's a cargo plane flying overhead that drops an unlikely amount of package. A journalist individual whom insists the professor allowed him to stay and cover the experiment. So let's just say that after some time, finally, the professor does allow him to stay, provided that he will cook and clean for the men. So yes, that as they near the time of the experiment, the individual soon happens to meet up with this native woman, whom I showed up a moment ago, folks. But of course, he abruptly disappears as he makes his presence known. So yeah, it gets pretty crazy as the films continue, which I didn't mind really. You gotta make things interesting somehow, I suppose. And that's what happens. So In this film, I guess you can say it really does attempt to be really lively, and that's what it does. Really does attempt to be really lively, of course. As for the monster fights actually did pretty well. I like the way the monster fights were actually really good, folks. And of course, at this point, the monster battles became pretty much a big attraction for these types of movies. So of course, they're gonna keep the tradition of monster fighting on and on, and they should. And I didn't mind that really. I mean, I guess Godzilla's gonna do what he's of course known to do, just fight a bunch of monsters. And this definitely displays that he used fire for his protection for this monster, and definitely wants to, show that he cares for this thing. So yeah, this does show like well, at least attempting anyway, show a different side of the character. Whether that's a kind of a weird thing or not, I guess you can appreciate the fact they're not trying to repeat too much the same stuff over here, folks. So yeah, there's that. It's not exactly like the previous installments, and I can say that the special effects department really did attempt their best for the monster designs and the monster fight sequences, which these films became known for. And yes, this film does have a sense of adventure, um, a pretty constructed story as a whole, and I did like that, of course. I did like what they were trying to do here, folks. But anyway, like I was saying, the special effects for considering the time period, of course, were pretty impressive for what they were trying to do. And they're trying to give you the impression that these characters, these things, are gigantic, and in a lot of ways they succeed in doing so. So, of course, trying to give you a sense of where these characters are really large and in charge, and of course they did a great job in that. Trying to give it a somewhat realistic impression of these characters. I know a lot of people didn't like the character design of Godzilla in this one. A lot of people did not like the Godzilla's design in this one, which I find kind of odd because they deemed his character to be way too ugly, which I found strange in itself because this was supposed to be a film where there's plenty of monsters. Of course, the monsters not gonna be exactly appealing, really. They're giant creatures, and as far as I'm concerned, this film is definitely underappreciated type of movie because it does vary away from the typical traditional Godzilla type movie. Yeah, it's not exactly something that's like the previous installments and is in some ways a bit different compared to the following installments as well. So, in some ways, this film does get overlooked as a result of that. So unfortunately, I feel like people don't talk about this entry of the series that often, which, if you ask me, again, should be pretty obvious. I do think that's a damn shame. You can't blame the filmmakers for actually attempting to do something a bit different, of course. So they really were attempting to keep the franchise from getting stale. And yeah, a lot of ways can say they actually succeeding in trying to do something a bit more creative and trying to be more passionate about what they want to do with these characters and whatnot. There's a human side, of course, of the characters. The human characters have their own thing going on with the whole scientific experiment, while simultaneously Godzilla himself has his own story. And that's another thing that a lot of people don't want to make comment on that is the fact that the human characters have their own story while simultaneously the monsters have their own story, and they could be somehow interlinked in one way or another. And this film definitely displays that. So, trying to have a pretty constructed story, a beginning, middle, and end, and it does feel like it does have a pretty constructed story. The story itself never felt like it was too slow or moving too fast. The pacing for this film as a whole was actually pretty good. So, I can definitely say that's a positive thing right there, folks. Because I can see what they were trying to do. In more ways than one, they actually succeeded in doing so. So, in regards of the narrative, they're trying to give you a sense of what's going on. So, yeah, not an easy feat, of course, no pun intended. Overall, it's a very, very very well made film, despite the low budget. The acting itself actually is actually pretty good. I like the acting in this one. And what do you know? A cheaply made film with great acting. What do you know? As for the music itself is really definitely well composed as well. The music it does help to give you a certain tone for it. So even the music itself does help out for this film and that tone they're trying to give. Like I mentioned before, they were really trying to have an adventurous feel to it, and I did appreciate for that. So I'll give credit when credit is due, obviously. I know this film is not for everyone, really. It's not gonna be everybody's cup of tea. I'm telling you that right now. So if you're somebody that's not familiar with the genre, this is definitely a film you're not gonna be looking for at first. So yeah, just throwing that out there, folks. I like the human characters, of course. The human characters do have their own thing going on. Obviously, they're trying to do their own thing, and of course, we see the monsters and whatnot. They're pretty cool in their own way. And yes, like I said before, it became a tradition to include a woman in these films. I mean, they don't always do it, but for the most time, they actually would. So yeah, there's like quite a few monsters that do appear on the screen, which I did like. So they're trying to keep it exciting in its own little way. So because like I said before, this was supposed to become up like a date movie kind of a thing. So okay, you can't blame it. You can't really blame them for trying to experiment with different genres, I guess. And that's what happened in these films, trying to touch on more than one genre. Well, that can be a good or bad thing. You can't blame them for trying to do something and not keep it the same thing all over again. And like I said, I can like Godzilla design in here. I did like his design here. As for the miniatures, as I was saying before, the miniatures were pretty good. And I did like the outfits that the human characters were wearing, of course, trying to give them a sort of appeal to them. And as mentioned earlier, the monster fights were really nicely done as well. The monster fights were really well choreographed. You see lots of fighting go on here. So I like the whole egg thing. I like the egg that Minia came from. That even that had a pretty good design. And as for Minia, and yeah, the character does come up pretty cool. So this was definitely the first time in the series where Godzilla himself had to play dad. So had to be daddy this time around, folks. That's the case. So of course, had to be protective and fight other monsters just to make sure that the son won't be harmed at all. So yeah, gotta make sure that the child, I guess, is safe, of course. And anyway, I mean, it's again, like I said a moment ago, it's never fully explained where exactly this monster came from, but okay, whatever, I guess. So, but for the most part, I did like what they were trying to do here. I did like what they were aiming for, and I can definitely say it's something I would recommend. If you have not seen this one as of yet, be sure I can definitely say is that it does attempt to have a good story. I did like for what it's trying to do here, folks. So, I know the film Son of Godzilla, and yeah, it was produced as the title implies. It's supposed to be the first time the franchise Godzilla has an offspring, whom strangely enough will not be given a proper name up until much later. So yeah, his actual name was given that. I don't know why, but okay, whatever. So yeah, I can say that this definitely is a film. I can say that this is definitely a good film as a whole. Even though, even though I can't say that not everybody will enjoy it, but I'm just saying the film itself is barely under an hour and 30 minutes, but nothing ever feels dragged out. So that's definitely a plus there. So I honestly did find some enjoyment in this film. So it's something I can definitely say I can that does have a place in my kaiju movie collection. So of course I do want to collect more of these movies, and I'll keep this in my collection. That's for sure. And as a whole, I could definitely say that this film does have its moments So I don't want to spoil it too much really at all. I can say that this is a film where, yeah, you get plenty of action, you get plenty of fighting, of course. So I can't really complain too much about this film at all. The dialogue is pretty fine for what it's worth. The dialogue wasn't too bad. And I can say that even on a technical level, they were trying to give it an impression of what's going on and give it a sense of the island of whatever. So they have done more right than wrong, I guess. On this film, of course, like I was saying a moment ago, it gets overlooked in a lot of ways. I mean, I guess I can see why it would, but it was a pretty solid film as far as I'm concerned because there's a good story here, good begin, middle, and end. So I'm not gonna give away the ending really of this film, but I did think that the ending for this film was actually pretty sweet. So even for a Godzilla movie, I really didn't see that coming. If I'm going blunt here, so there's that. I'll give this film an overall rating of a 7.2 out of 10. It gets a 7.2 out of 10 for me. And of course, as always, thanks for watching and take care. Until next time, see ya. Oh yeah.